exactly. So I've got a I've got a dirty electricity meter right here. It's called a line EMI meter. It's just a very simple meter that you can plug in. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to raise my desk up a little bit here, and I'm going to plug this in. And now I've got things filtered pretty well here at the house. So it has a little speaker on it. You can probably hear a little bit.
You don't have enough dirty electricity. It doesn't sound a lot.
Yeah, I know. There's not much. Okay, so I've got this little flashlight charger, and this is something that we found on an assessment in Texas. And it was boggling us, or it was mind-boggling because it was a big mystery because we couldn't figure out where the dirty electricity in the home was coming from. We started to shut off breakers, and then sometimes when we shut off breakers, the readings would go way down. So it was these little flashlight chargers. People had like 5 or 6 of these. They were all over the house. Now I'm gonna kind of show this on the screen here. So I'm about between 45 and 50 millivolts of dirty electricity on the line right now.
Nice.
Now, when I plug this in, watch what happens and listen.
Oh.
So it went all the way up to 700 millivolts down from 50. And you can hear the noise, how it's buzzing like crazy. So that's all those higher frequency interference frequencies, the dirty electricity. Now, if I unplug it, it just goes away.
So it's dumping a lot of frequencies that shouldn't be there on the line. It's basically bad electronic design, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, so the way they designed that particular flashlight plug, it was just terrible.
Yeah. That can happen. All the electronics are made very, very quickly and very cheaply in China and India and wherever. And I think it's part of the problem. A lot of cheap electronics that are built in a very poor way.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's several ways that we can deal with that. We can filter it, or you can block it from even the electric field from affecting you at all with grounding technology, putting a grounded barrier between you and the electric field source. But one of the best things to do is if you have something that you have to use, and I would normally recommend get rid of the flashlight chargers, get rid of the CFL light bulbs, which you already talked about in the first module. And then solar panels can be problematic, but you can still live with them. Living near a wind farm, some of those things, faulty electrical circuits. There's a lot of different sources of dirty electricity. So there's a lot of pool pumps that people have. If you have a pool or a fountain, sometimes those switching motors can cause problems. And then some people's furnaces even can cause problems. So, and then dimmer switches can be problematic, but it's not something where if you have a house full of dimmers, don't feel like that's the first thing you need to do is get rid of all your dimmer switches. There is a benefit to having dimmers from the light perspective, but they do cause dirty electricity only when they're on. So it's not necessarily something that's a huge stressor, EMF stressor in most people's houses. It's not the first thing that I would do. And if you do have them, having them all the way on the highest brightness or all the way down to the lowest brightness is the best. In the middle is actually the highest. So let's plug this in. And if you want to stop the screen share real quick, we can.
Sure, my bad. Yeah, we're just gonna go on new full screen.
Yeah.
There you go.
So this is a Satic plug. This is one of the ones that we sell. And there's Green Waves and there's Stetzers. I have a bunch of these that I take apart just because I'm curious about what they look like inside. So this one you can actually plug in. Okay. So it's plugged in now. And there. And now if I plug back in the flashlight charger directly into that, it doesn't go up at all. So it stops the dirty electricity from getting onto the circuit because I'm plugged into the same circuit with this. So that's one way that we can kind of stop a source of dirty electricity. Like if someone has a TV, for instance, that causes a lot of dirty electricity whenever it's on, you can use one of those on the same power strip, or plug the TV directly into that filter, whether it's a green wave or a static filter. Those are the best ones because they have the plug-in with them, in my opinion. But anything, if you already have a Stetzer, that's fine. Use that and plug it into the same power strip. That'll work too. It's just better to be able to have it plugged directly in, so it's not infecting any other electronics or the circuit. And then and even in your own neighborhood, or maybe even the power company will create dirty electricity, and that actually ends up being delivered to your house. So the way that the electricity is created and delivered to your house is different in every single area where we test this. So if you live close to a solar farm or a wind farm, then they're converting the DC back to AC, so it's usable for our appliances. And your electricity in those areas is probably a lot dirtier than an area where there's an alternative type of energy source where they're not converting it so close to where you live. So most people have dirty power delivered to them from their power company. It's just the nature of things. And so already it needs to be filtered. And then also the way that we build our houses today, it's not with health in mind. We're all exposed to these pulsating 50 and 60 hertz fields. And so even if you don't have a wiring error in your house, which we test for that too, and we're going to talk more about that in the next module when we talk about magnetic fields. Mm-hmm. But even if you don't have a wiring error, you're still exposed to electricity, electrical fields, and dirty electricity. And so we haven't built our homes with this this idea in mind, that the exposure to these fields can actually cause damage and chronic fatigue and all sorts of different symptoms. And so fixing that is something that a lot of us aren't really thinking about. Oh, sometimes we'll test this in someone's house and they'll think, my goodness, what's wrong? Did they do something wrong in my house? Did they wire something wrong? And no, when we're measuring electric fields, this is actually very normal to see this much exposure. And